Steel Division 2 information. This is intended for brand new players to the series, people who may have played some of the previous games but are just very rusty, aiming towards just new players. Part 1 of this video is going to cover divisions and units and basically the roles units have and special abilities and icons to know, and basically how to quickly build a battle group and just all the details about it in a very basic setting. I'm not going to be teaching you how to build competitive ones or anything. That's not the goal of this. Part 2, I'm going to use some replays and kind of show you troops in action, just tips for new players, what to do, what not to do, and how to use different types of units in their role. So first things first, battle groups. If you click battle groups, we get 3 options: divisions, battle groups, and armory. First things, armory. Let's get this out of the way. This just lets you see every unit in the game. Lets you look at their stats. Nothing more to this, but if you're just interested in either looking at the models or just seeing specifically what weapons and information they have, that's where you go. As a new player, you don't need to touch it. So if we go to divisions, we can see all the divisions in the game. I might have some you don't have. If you do own Steel Division Normandy 44, you get access to, I believe it's 8 divisions, so there might be a couple more here. 2 things you need to really pay attention to are obviously if they're allies or axis, their rating. Your division rating generally is A is more offensive, B is going to be more defensive. As a new player, stick with A. A is not necessarily better. It's one of those things. I guess you could just say A is going to be easier to use, and in that sense, generally better. And in this game, there's definitely some tiers, some divisions just in Steel Division Normandy 44 just overperformed on other divisions. So, not that stuff's usually broken, but there are going to be some divisions that are just, quote, better than other divisions. And some of that will also just be some divisions might slightly counter another division a little bit more. And then we look at other things to pay attention to is division type. You have armored, mechanized, infantry. That's just kind of gives you an idea of what to find in that division. And obviously, an armored division you're gonna have a lot more access to tanks and armor, self-propelled guns. Infantry, you're gonna have more access to different types of infantry. Like an armored division, you're gonna have infantry, but you won't have as much, and you're gonna have more limited options in what you can bring. You're gonna likely an armored division have some very basic infantry. An infantry division might have some infantry with special abilities, or more infantry that have like flamethrowers, stuff like that. And mechanized, you can kind of think as an in between. Just a lot more mobile. And almost all these divisions will have like armor. So if you're playing infantry division, it's not like it's not gonna have armor. And the battle groups is where you make a division. So if I go to create, it takes me back to the division sheet, and I can pick a division. So let's pick this infantry division. So you can see we do, again, I just want to show we do have tanks if we want to add tanks. We don't have many, but you do have some. And we can quickly show, if we just do a random armor division, again, even here we don't even have that many. But likely those are going to be just more quality. I'm not too familiar with these, some of these divisions from the new game yet. But you can see I have a couple divisions already made. One thing you can do, and you can look some up online, is people can export their list, or you can get other people. So if I click export, it copies to your clipboard its import code. And so if you find someone's online, you just again go to battle group screen, import. It auto pasted the one I put in here, but if I do Control V for paste, it puts that division code in here, test 2, just name it. I go in here, it's auto filled, it's auto populated. That's how you're going to be able to share divisions across the game to your friend, or just if you don't really want to build divisions, or maybe you want to just grab one and tweak some, like this has a little bit too much infantry, I want swap infantry out for some more anti-air, whatever. You can grab people's and tweak them. So if you go to create, again, you just pick any division you want. And again, your battle group is tied specifically to division. So this battle group will only be able to use in that division. So some things to look at. We have activation points in the top right. Whenever we add a unit, it takes the amount of activation points in the slot. So the first recon, no matter what it is, if I add it, it took one, the next one will also take one. Oh, next one will also take one. So I'm at 3 out of 50. Now if I add a fourth recon, it's going to take 2 points. So I'm up to 5. This is different. All this is per division. Some divisions are not going to have 5 recon slots. Some of them, the first 2 might be 1 point. The second one might be 3. It's all division specific. So that's how activation points work. As a new player, I recommend keeping this unbalanced. In the game, there's 3 phases. Every minute, you get that many points. Points are used to call in more reinforcements as the game goes on. Generally, you get more points the further the game goes on. But you can play, Juggernaut, where you start off with fewer points, but if you make it to the late game, you're getting significant more points per minute. And the opposite would be Vanguard, where you start with more points at the very beginning, but late game you're making much less. But I recommend keeping them balanced as a new player. So we have 9 roles over here, 8 of which are units. Defense are in placements just placed at the start of the game. And you can see they don't take any activation points. So, Recon. We're just going to quickly go over them all. Recon are generally going to be very small squads. They are good at spotting. They are going to have very good optics and usually very good stealth. Generally, you don't want them to fight unless they're forced to. There's different types of recon units. We have a guy on a bike that's going to be quickly moving. But generally, it's going to be a small group of men. We have a sniper here. Sometimes you'll have a recon like light armored vehicle. Again, it's going to be good at early in the game, but your recon's role should be just spotting, not fighting. Infantry. This is just where you can start adding a bunch of infantry to your division. There's different types, like, this guy, they have some light machine guns. They're going to be very good at suppressing. These guys are going to be able to take out tanks with anti-tank grenades. So I'll go in this a little bit more, but very quickly, so you can see this division has no AT. If we look at their card, there's nothing here. This icon, it's called Tank Buster. It means they can attack armor and damage it and destroy it. And in this case, as we looked at them earlier, they have anti-tank grenades. So if your infantry does not have this icon, and you can see this in game as well, it essentially can't hurt armor, so you want to keep it away. If they do have this icon, they still usually need to be very close. So like these guys have TNT they just added. But the range, So it's 100 meters. Most anti-tank on infantry is 100 meters. I think some Shreks and stuff are like 150, 200. Um, so infantry have to be close. Essentially, you always keep them like in a tree line, and if a tank drives by, you can knock it out. Oh, they have a bazooka right there. But infantry are exactly what you think they are. Often they're your most plentiful unit. You're going to get them all over the map, holding ground location, being in trees, just map control. You have tanks. Tanks are good all around. You want to keep them at range if you can. Closer a tank is to another tank or infantry, the easier it is to get knocked out. But they're going to have machine guns. Their guns are going to be very devastating to infantry, light vehicles, and the main thing tanks have to watch out for other tanks, AT guns, and driving up to forest or buildings you don't control. Support. This is going to be the most wide range for most armies. Support, for example, we just have a flamethrower unit here. Mortar, because it can like get some smoke out. You're gonna have like MGs. The big thing that's in support is supply trucks. Supply trucks refuel ammunition. They can repair armor as it gets damaged. So as units fight, like they have an ammo count, and they'll get an icon above them when they do run out of ammo. Generally, that's not something you have to worry about. But when you do have like an AT gun in an awesome position, it's just been suppressing tanks and armor for a very long time. Eventually, it might run out of ammo. But usually with infantry, you're not worried about ammo. With artillery, you are. A lot of times you're going to place artillery, and I'll just pop out an ammo truck there. And the other thing supply trucks are used for is just repairing armor when it gets damaged. If you park it next to the armor, it repairs it. Anti-tank, again, pretty self-explanatory. You're going to have Panzerschrecks and like AT guns. Anti-air, pretty obvious. It can be target ground as well, and it can be very effective against infantry. Artillery, so you have your classic type of artillery. I don't have anything. So, I have a self-propelled gun type of artillery. One thing you want to look at is units like this. You might look at this guy and wonder, how's this artillery? Well, I'll go over this again a little later in more detail. They have the icon spotter, and basically if you're attacking an area within a zone around them, it's going to fire quickly and more accurate. So these guys themselves actually, yes, cannot call in artillery, but they support artillery. Then you have a unit like this in artillery, and this icon lets them call off the map artillery. So usually you get like 3 call-ins, and so you don't, range doesn't matter as long as this guy, and it's usually a very big range, as long as they are within range, they call in just off the map artillery, and you're limited to the number of times you can call it in. You have air. You're gonna have various types of airplanes. Recon, which are used for only seeing units on the field and cover. You're gonna have some with bombs and torpedoes for. So this is a bomber. It's gonna be good at just bombing positions. Rockets are gonna be good at attacking armor. If you have it spotted. If it has more types of bombs, it just means it has more bombs. So like how this Yak, it has the 1 icon, and this has 2, and this has 3. It's just the more devastating that bomber is going to be. But generally, which I don't. Oh, here's some. And then you have fighters that are used to fight other aircraft. Generally, the easiest way to think of it is you have recon planes that don't do any fighting, do spotting, which are important, but they can easily be killed. Bombers for attacking emplacements such as artillery or maybe buildings that infantry are in. Rockets for attacking armor. And fighters for just fighting aircraft. Now, other aircraft such as your bombers, like this one, can fight, but they just aren't as effective. And finally, you have defenses. Not going to go too much into them. When you add defenses, they just give you defenses you can place at the start of the game. So, for example, barbed wire, you have 3,000 meters. So, like when you click this at the start of the game, and we will show that later, you click, drag a line, and like infantry can't cross barbed wire. You have to destroy it. Gun pits that you can place guns into, bunkers, trenches, just like barbed wire. You click and place it. You'd have with this 150 meters of trenches you can place, and infantry can go in the trench and get green cover. So now to go into more detail. So like let's go just back to infantry really quick. So if we go to add a unit, so I want to add these guys. They have some anti-tank. You have two main choices for a new player to pay attention to. So these guys can come in deployment phase A or B. The only difference, and this is basically true for everything, the later something comes in the game, the more call-ins you get. So if we look at this unit card, this is how many points it costs to call them in, so 15. And if we back up, so like again, if we're going balance, every minute we get 100 points in phase A, then in phase B we'd get 140 points every minute. So these guys are cheap, but you know it's not a ton of guys. They only cost 15 points. I get 6 of them. That's what the blue number means. And right now that would be A. If I would call them in B, I get double the amount to call in the entire game. But I could not call them in B. If I have them in A and round B hits, I can still call them in. It's not like you can only call them in A. It's just the earliest phase they can come in. So, it's like these guys can come in A, B, or C. So A, it's 4, 8, or 16. The other thing is experience. Experiences can be very potent. If you upgrade experience, generally it just takes down the number of units you can call in. So right again at B, if I call them at just 1 experience, bump up to 2, I'm going down by 4. But experience can be very significant. I don't know if we can exactly see where it's going to affect their stats. But experience, they're going to be more potent, have better accuracy, not get suppressed as quickly. So when you're calling infantry or any unit, it's all about balance. So, I'm just throwing stuff in here. The blue number over here is how many. So I could only have 3 cards of that, and then it goes away. So, I'm picking up just whatever. So a lot of these are forced to come in. They all came at B, but you're generally gonna want a couple A. If I did something like that. So in phase A, infantry wise, I could only literally call in 24 units, and one of these is not a leader. He's a commando. Commando, I believe, is his icon. Discipline. So basically, unit with like infantry discipline keep units fighting. They make them not run away as quickly. The star is leader. If they are within range of the leader, basically they get improvements. It makes them tick up an experience. So if someone like this guy say if he's at no experience, if he's in range of the leader, he'll be at 1 experience. and that is very significant. Again, experience is nothing to scoff at. The other thing you can play around with calling in units is their transport. Some of them you can change, some you can't. You always want some transport. Essentially, everything's going to come in on a transport if it's not self-propelled. It's on its own, like a tank. A lot of transports, if they don't have guns, just instantly go away as soon as you unload. So like this truck, as soon as I unload it, just disappears. If it is a transport that does have a weapon on it, such as this, it will stick around. And you can see when I choose that, it does change the cost. So it goes up. Um, but most of the time with infantry, you're either going to just have, a truck that goes away, or you might have some light mechanized vehicle that can stick around and continue to move infantry on the battlefield, or they're going to throw down suppressing fire. But the big thing with infantry is watching its icons, seeing if they can take out tanks. They're a leader. Again, leader units are usually smaller units, but they're buffing units around them. Discipline is mostly used for I don't have any right now, but there's some types of infantry with the icon. It's like a heart called disheartened. Basically, they just get suppressed quicker unless if a disciplined unit is near them. And then if we go to support, you're going to see other types of infantry, like ones with flamethrowers, even though they're not in the infantry uh, role. Recon are obviously infantry units, but they just have very good optics for spotting. Uh, and recon, I covered it a little bit. Generally, you're just getting units in the forest. You're gonna have some special units with, especially the Russians, like snipers, that are gonna be effective at. So recon, I went over it a little bit already, but generally, their infantry are just putting tree lines and houses to spot. You don't want them to fight. There are exceptions to that. There are some light armor recon units that might do a little bit of fighting, especially in the early game, or units like the sniper that are going to be effective at, like, especially attacking emplacements like an AT gun at a far range. Because they have 1,000-meter range, but they still are a recon unit. Support is a lot of everything. It's going to be machine guns. The big thing with support is you're going to want multiple trucks to call in. You don't necessarily need one at A. B and C isn't bad. If I do that, I'm why is it not ticking over? Why that coming at B? Oh, it's because I gotta do it here. So yeah, if I want him coming at B and then this one coming at C, that's 16 throughout the game. And again, the first 10 minutes, usually you're not running out of ammunition very often. But yeah, you're gonna, basically some light artillery, some self-propelled guns. This unit has a radio, so they're gonna help with artillery call-ins. You have some mortars here. Anti-tank are exactly like they sound like. Usually putting them in wood lines and stuff, tree lines to try and take out armor, especially at roads. Anti-air is exactly what it sounds like. I don't think there's any special icons to really worry about in almost any of these. This icon, it can be used as a artillery piece if the indirect fire. So basically, this unit is anti-tank, but it can also be used as artillery. You don't really have any special things to worry about with anti-air. Artillery, again, exactly like it sounds like. The big thing with artillery in this game is smoke. Smoke is very important. If you ever need to cross an open ground, you're assaulting a town, you want to smoke the area in between your units and the enemy, or just smoke the enemy so they can't see. As a new player, bring artillery. Artillery is very powerful for controlling the battlefield, pushing out, say the enemy's in a forest and it's covering a road that you really need to utilize. That's how you're going to push them out. And again, sometimes maybe they're moving the units around, you're not killing them with artillery. You just smoke the area, and then you get infantry to assault where you're attacking. Air, I always recommend him a little bit. At least have fighters. You always want some fighters. Losing 100% air cover in this game can be brutal. You can make up for it a little bit with your anti-air units. And air is generally more powerful at the start of the game, because if someone does bring a line of anti-air, mid-late game they can have a lot of anti-air on the battlefield, which will negate total air loss, but you do want some attack aircraft, and I usually recommend at least bring in a couple bombers or, rocket planes. And tanks, generally, you're going to just have what you expect. Some tanks will be leaders again, so they'll buff the tanks around them. So you don't necessarily want that tank out in front doing the fighting, but they're buffing. So that is battle groups in a nutshell. I'm trying to keep this quick and to the point. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll be happy to answer them. You want generally a little bit of everything, no matter what type of army you're playing. Make sure you have enough recon for the entire game, because a lot of your early recon will be killed. But no matter who you are, infantry is usually key to controlling areas. And then tanks are good at killing about anything, but tanks, if they're unsupported, they will get taken out. You want recon to make sure where your tank's driving is clear, and you don't just want them driving up to a forest that you don't have control of, because if they have any type of infantry in there with anti-tanks, they're going to take them out. Support, again, is a bit of everything. The big thing in support to pay attention to is ammunition trucks. They're going to repair armor as it gets broken, give any unit more ammunition. Again, these trucks, if we look at them, they just have a amount. Like a truck does an infinite amount, but it's not specific. It's not like this truck has, it just has supply, and that will just tick down as any unit gets ammunition. ATs, exactly. It sounds like anti-air. Artillery, again, you want to bring enough artillery. I would recommend 3 or 4 cards at least. And the big thing with new players is make sure you use smoke when you fire artillery. And when you're shooting artillery in the bottom right, there will be an option to fire smoke instead of rounds. Then air, at least bring fighters, even if you're gonna go low. Like, I'm not gonna bring rockets, and if that's all I wanted, all right. But at least you want to have some air control. And defenses, don't worry too much about as a new player. Bring them; they don't cost points. They're free to place generally. Like these bunkers, they cost like 5. This one costs 30, so that is a significant amount starting game, but popping down bunkers really doesn't cost much. Always spend up to your max activation points. There's no reason not to. So that is your battle groups. And the next video we'll be covering basically how to use these units. I'll be just showing some tips and tricks, stuff to pay attention to as a new player. You don't want to do things like blobbing. You always want to have recon scouting And yeah, we'll go over that. And again, if you have any further questions, comments, just let me know below. Thank you for watching.